okay? It is so fun to be with you guys today. It's exciting and humbling, especially since I was just a student a few months ago. It's good to see familiar faces and faces that aren't familiar, but hopefully I'll get to talk with you afterwards if I haven't met you yet. And my title here, yes, there's a line at the end. It's just a little facetious. But I am excited to share what I've learned from these past few months working. I'm an instructional designer at State Food Safety or Above Training up in Orem. And I'm also excited to share what some other recent graduates have said about what they've learned since they've graduated. I was able to get a hold of them in a survey. So without further ado, we'll start with this question here. Who here has taken a food handler course or tests? Okay, quite a few hands here. Yeah, so someone who's willing to tell me about their experience. Do you still remember that experience taking the course or tests? I'm seeing a few head nods, a little bit of so-so. Yes, sometimes they're not the most remarkable or don't stick in our minds as much, and I'm going to talk about why that is sometimes. And when I was applying to this job at State Food Safety, at first, food handling and food safety didn't sound like the most exciting subject. But as I interviewed with Emily, who's here today, she's in the company too.
Hello.
She was telling me more about who this food handler population is. And we saw in this room that quite a few people have taken these courses and tests before. But
Is your microphone on?
It
I'm not
is.
getting any levels.
it should, but I can move it up closer. It's unmuted.
Okay.
Let me move it a little bit higher, and hopefully that will work. I'll try to project a little bit more too.
It just has to do with the people who are remote. I want to make sure they can hear you.
Okay, yeah, definitely. And if I need to use a normal mic, I can.
I'm just going to check with that to make sure that they can hear.
All right. Well, as far as the population goes for food handlers, if you think about it, anyone from 14 years old who can work their first job at a food business up to any age is a food handler. Varying levels of education, all the way up to someone who is very trained in culinary arts. You have fast food to 5-star restaurants. You have such a diverse population. You have English language learners, or people who do not speak English at all the way to those who have been citizens in the United States and speak English. And that made me interested. How do you create a course and a test that can help all of these people accomplish their goals, have a livelihood even? And in addition, if you've ever had a foodborne illness yourself or food poisoning, you know how terrible it is. You're stuck in the bathroom for a day or more and unable to do anything else. These things have high impact. Food safety has a lot of impact on people's lives, and you want to feel safe when you go out to eat. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about our company and kind of what we do, who our clients or audience are. So we kind of have the regulatory side, which are like food health departments and counties that decide that they want to use their course in their area. Or we also have the industry side, where we partner with restaurants that you might recognize. So if you haven't heard of H-E-B, that's a retailer, grocery store chain in Texas, but the rest of these you probably do recognize. So I want you to put yourself in the shoes of a food worker at Zupa's, since that one's probably familiar to all of you. So let's say that you're working the lunch shift and it's become really, really busy. The line is out the door, you're working to get a sandwich together, and then suddenly your coworker says, we need someone at the register. So are you going to take the time to take off your gloves, go to the sink, wash your hands and scrub them for a full 20 seconds, then go to the register, and after doing that and going back to food, are you going to go wash your hands again for a full 20 seconds, put on new gloves, and start working with food again? And you might think, yes, that sounds relatively simple, but in the heat of the moment, sometimes these behaviors are really hard to do. So that's a real-life question that we're trying to address through our instruction in our courses. And that leads me to the question that I kind of introduced in the email before the seminar about behavior change. And people often know what they should do, but they don't, and why is that? So behavior change tries to address that question and find ways to engage the learner and encourage those changes in behavior. And I just want to point out that this isn't just something that is applicable to corporate compliance trainings like mine with food handlers and hand washing. It's applicable to any kind of instruction in K through 12 or university settings. You want your learners to change in some way, right? Whether it's something as concrete as washing hands, or it's critical thinking, or something else. So kind of think about the projects that you have going and how you're wanting your learners to change, and see if this applies. So this book right here, has anybody read Design for How People Learn? If you had not, okay, awesome. I wonder, was it required for a class, or did you,
Yeah.
okay. Thumbs up, I'm glad. Because our whole team is encouraged to read it, the product development team that Emily's over. And it's great. So would someone care to explain what this diagram is with the elephant? And it doesn't have to be a perfect explanation, just what you remember. Desiree? Thanks.
So in order to do something, we kind of need the knowledge, like the practical, oh yeah, this is like what I need to do. That's like the writer, the kind of logical, this is how I would do this thing. But then also the elephant, there's like a lot of things that require some kind of like emotional, like you really actually want to do it. So like getting up in the morning is an example.
Yes.
Your writer might know, oh, it's like 6 o'clock, I need to get up. But the elephant might just say, no, keep snoozing. I don't want to get up yet.
Awesome. That was a great explanation. Yeah, so the writer, we like to think that they're in control a lot of the time, but the fact is the elephant is a lot stronger. And though you can get the writer to pay attention for a while, it's cognitively tiring, right? To be, paying attention to content that, is just logical or kind of dry. So the question that Julie Erickson addresses in her book, and I actually got to go to one of her speeches at a DevLearn conference, which was really great. She talked about behavior change there, is how to engage the elephant. And there are many ways that you can. She proposes some humorous ones, like show it something shiny and tell it that all the other elephants are doing it. And there are a few more too. But I know that with your background, having read this book and been in these classes, you probably have some great ideas for how to engage the elephant. And so with that in mind, we're going to kind of go to the activity that I had you prepare for. And if you didn't, that's okay. But where you're thinking of an instructional activity that promotes or encourages behavior change for food handlers. And that can be any behavior you choose. If you want to pick hand washing, you could think about staying home when you're sick. That could be one of the behaviors, whatever you want to choose. And if you've already thought of it, great. If not, start thinking of one, and I want you to turn to the people around you and brainstorm. Just tell each other your ideas, and then pick one to share. And then the people who are online, just comment back and forth to each other with the ideas that you came up with, and decide on what one you want to share. Maybe put a couple asterisks next to it so we know which one it is. All right, so go ahead and get started. I'll give you about 5 minutes, or if it goes under, that's fine.
So I think people don't wash their hands. Value their hands enough. So if they don't wash their hands, just cut them off.
Cut them off?
Make your example.
I like that. There's a thing called Chop Square in Saudi Arabia, and I think if we just showed a quick YouTube video of that.
There you go.
Any other ideas?
Not washing hands, he was still in the bathroom, so now my brain is so like
Oh,
something dramatic.
the
like
janitor.
that. Yeah, when he's like, yeah.
I like that idea a lot, actually.
I don't know how that relates to this, but he's stuck on that.
Well, I think it's like sometimes you want people to wash hands, it's like a quick rinse, but like there's a certain percentage of all water that is just feces. Yeah.
Of what? There's a percentage of what?
There's a certain percentage of all tap water that's just.
So we need to tell them, would you rather wash your hands in food for 5 seconds or thoroughly wash an excrement for 20 seconds?
That tells me what time you get.
Excrement is good. I like that. I want to hear this fact now, like this percentage. 33% of bottled water. Wow. That's gross as crap.
Literally.
Okay, any other ideas?
I was just thinking, the second counter to one of my YSA bishops, he said that he was part of a company that was called Vital Smarts. And they helped, I don't know if you guys know the book Crucial Conversations. Crucial Conversations. Anyway, he was one of the authors for that. And they helped, one of the companies they consulted for was a hospital. And they said, they try to get to the problem. What's the problem, you know? And they kind of narrowed it down to like sanitation. And so one of the things that they helped facilitate was the solution of always asking the doctor or whoever comes into the patient's room, did you wash your hands? Or like, did you get the, they had a little Germex, right? So then it doesn't matter. So the doctor would come out of the previous appointment, Germex their hands, and come into the next appointment, and then the nurse would say, "Oh, did you Germex your hand?" And the doctor would say, "Oh, yes, I already did," because in the patient room setting, the doctor has more authority than the nurse, so the nurse can't really say or like push the doctor to do it. But they made a rule: nurse always has to ask the doctor, and doctor always has to do it, you know. And so even if the doctor is like, "Oh yeah, I already did it," but the rule is you have to do it as you walk into the patient room. So the nurse asked, they empowered the nurses and said, "Did you Germex your hands as you walked in?" "Oh no, I didn't." So he has to go back to the wall again, read Germex, even though he just did it like 5 seconds ago. But they ended up getting the #1 safety hospital award in like the whole nation.
So we need to have nurses at the Washington.
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
I think creating that team accountability. So it's like you don't wash your hands unless someone sees you wash your hands. Like someone has to see you do it.
I like that idea. Yeah, I think that's the winner.
It's like, did you wash your hands? Yes. Did someone see you? No. Didn't happen.
Yeah.
It's like
So
the
who
whole
would ask it?
tree falling down.
I think we encourage like clients then. Like in this setting, like who would be the one you're pushing to ask? Like would it be someone like at a restaurant tell everyone? Like I don't know.
Have you guys ever worked in the kitchen? Yeah. I was a dishwasher. So at this little cult restaurant in my hometown called Countryside.
I worked in the
They had arranged the marriages. It was cool.
folks' home with like people. I'm just like, I don't know that there would ever be people like watching me at any given time do these behaviors. It's not just like playing 1,000 different things at the same time.
That's true, yeah.
It's not just
You just have to let someone know.
All right, if you haven't decided what idea you're going to
Look, I'm washing my hands.
You make a joke.
Yeah. How many people can you get to
Is the
watch?
audio picking up okay now?
There's some kind of I had 7 people watching me.
Yeah.
You know how like you go into a cafe and you order like extra cheese? It's so fast.
They hear you loud and
We
clear.
don't go to cafe right here. We're Chipotle.
I took Chipotle yesterday for the first time in like 2 years.
Growing up, we didn't like it.
All right, we're together now. Let's get started. Maybe with this group, if you guys are ready to share the idea that you narrowed it down to.
Sure. So, one of our members had an experience where they talked about a hospital, or not a hospital, what is it?
Yeah, hospital.
Yeah, hospital. Where basically the doctors had accountability where it didn't matter if they washed their hands or Germex their hands or anything before they got into a patient's room. The rule was like the nurse had to watch the doctor clean their hands before the nurse would leave the room with the patient. And so it didn't matter if he had just washed it, didn't matter if he promised he'd washed it, she had to see it. So we thought it'd be fun to do that. There's an accountability where if no one saw you wash your hands, you didn't wash your hands. So,
Interesting.
and then we were thinking of fun ways we could turn that into a game, like how many people can I get to watch me wash my hands, and different kind of reward systems like that. But the idea that, yeah, if nobody watched you, then it doesn't count. You have to do it again.
All right, I like that accountability. Do you think it would be other food handlers or managers or?
And just somebody has to watch
Okay,
you. Yeah.
someone.
And the reason why it's that general is because we've all worked in different areas of food where it would be unrealistic to have, like, we can't have a nurse sitting at the sink watching us in the restaurant. So we think just the first step would just be accountability. And then maybe individual institutions could go further and specific people in charge might have that responsibility, but
Just get hired as a watcher.
there's a watcher and a watcher, yeah.
Awesome, thank you guys. And let's move on to the next group there.
So I don't remember where I saw this, if it was in prep for this or just my news feed, but there was a teacher who did an experiment with their students with bread. Basically, they had a controlled bread that they knew was handled straight out of the bag. There was one that had been handled with clean hands. I'm holding the picture, but you can't really see it. And one that she allowed the kids to handle with dirty hands. And the dirty hands one, in the same period of time, has been covered in mold and completely gone rancid. So the idea was just that sometimes we understand things at one level, like you're saying, with knowledge, but this gives a much more emotional response to the idea of what can happen to food if you don't take proper precautions.
I love that. Yeah, I was talking with another group about how we do use the U factor, the gross factor, sometimes in the course because of that emotional response, which increases retention, the chance that you'll remember that activity. So that's great. Thank you. All right, next group. Thank you.
So I'd like to bring up just two really quick samples if I could. But my initial thought was, and it's kind of similar to what you had said, but you do an activity where you have two of the same dish that's placed in front of the workers, and you say, okay, one was prepared with gloves and one was prepared without gloves. Pick which one you want to eat. And just making it more like visual for them that that the person they're feeding the food to can't tell if you prepared it with gloves or not. And so you're, just like they can't tell which one, but they would want to eat the one that was not prepared, like knowing that one of them was not. So something along those lines. But then we talked about how positive reinforcement is something that's really good to try and work towards. So like, you could have something where everybody has an opportunity to report to someone in charge if someone did something good. And so then it's not just one person trying to watch for everybody to do good stuff, but it's the whole, kind of team, and someone can say to the manager or whoever, hey, so-and-so wash their hands really well, or, and then there can be kind of rewards for that as well.
Awesome, yeah, two really great ideas there, and a way to create more of a culture within a restaurant or whatever place you're in of food safety. That's great, thank you. Back there, I don't know how you guys split up, but whoever's next. I think you guys just came in, so sorry to put you on the spot.
Ours was similar to the first table where we thought about more environmental changes, so setting up the stations. So when you walked back from the register, you had to go past the garbage can where you dropped the old gloves. You went past the station where you picked up a new pair of gloves. And so that was part of the flow of the environment before you got back to the sandwich station.
Yeah.
So one thing to add there is it might be as much of an environmental and a problem, a situation in which training wasn't the main problem, or lack of training, or motivation, just more like eliminating obstructions in the environment to more optimal performance.
That's great. Thank you for bringing that up. That's huge. We talked a little bit about the flow of food in our course. Go ahead.
So ours was on how to get people to stay home from work when they're sick. And
It's real.
it was really hard. I think it's a hard thing because I think we have this notion of a hard worker, and a hard worker doesn't quit no matter what, right? So you wouldn't miss, especially if you wanted your manager to think you're awesome. So we thought about we could include some testimonials of people who had that mindset and had conversations with their managers to kind of model the behavior change, and also the different phrases that you could use to talk to a manager about wanting to stay home when you're sick.
I like that. That could be a very useful tool, and it's kind of the mindset of all the elephants are doing it, right? Helping them feel more empowered to do it themselves. Great. Thanks. All right, I think we're moving up to that group. Maybe Emily's table?
Oh, are we going?
We're gonna skip us.
Yeah, skip us.
Okay, no worries. Anybody else back there that wanted to talk? You guys good? Okay, all right. your turn.
All right, so our group wanted to have some positive incentives, and so we decided it'd be really fun if you had like an Xbox Connect attached to the sink, and so in order to turn on the sink, you did like a dance move, and then when you go into the Connect, it'll, as you like scrub your hands together, it'll be like, oh yeah, good job. And then if you separate them too early, it says, oh bad. And then there's like a 20-second long song that plays, and yeah, there's parts where you like dispense soap and then scrub again, so there's like different dance moves in it. And so it makes it like really fun, all these sound effects.
Nice.
Yeah.
No, like as fun as that sounds, a lot of research is being done about VR and AR for behavior change and how those immersive environments can enforce good behavior. And something that we're starting to develop is an in-browser AR app for people to use, and we're hoping to have a game where you use your phone and you look at your hand and there are cartoon germs on your hand. And you have to shake your phone and estimate how long 20 seconds is. And if you get to 20 seconds or longer, then all the germs are gone once you look back at your phone. But if you don't, then they're still there. So that's one idea we've had, kind of along those lines. So, and this table?
So our concept, and I think that we stuck with, is that maybe the reason why the behavior is not changing is there's kind of a lack of connection between you and the person that you're interacting with, and like your self-care, or like sending that text or whatever, like just seems like more important or convenient than the health of the people that you're serving. And so we thought of like maybe a game or choose your own adventure where if you like choose to send that text, it like shows the ramifications that may be slightly exaggerated or dramatized to, I don't know, or just explain the point that those choices that you make will impact negatively other people.
Yeah, that's great. They see the consequences of those decisions in a safe environment. It's funny you said that for one of our projects, and I'll talk about our Freedom Friday a little bit later, but for one of our Freedom Friday projects, a coworker and I created a decision-based course where we show some pretty gross stuff where you can decide to cut carrots on a dirty cutting board that has chicken juice and stuff, or you can go down the right path and then at the end either I get sick or we're happy customers. So it's kind of a similar idea to that and can be powerful.
Alyssa, do you want to hear from the online?
Oh yes, of course. Thank you for reminding me. Okay. Let's see. So do we just want to read it, or does someone want to be a spokesperson? Did they narrow it down? I'm trying to read through here and see.
I think they went with
The TV is being unreliable.
Tanya's
If you
idea.
want, I've got it.
If you could read that, that'd be great.
Can you give me a microphone? Okay, sorry about the technical difficulties in the room here with the television. So it looks like Tanya's idea was the one that our online group came up with. She says, I thought of having people put on gloves that had some kind of chemical and then letting them go about their task for a few minutes, and then using black lights to show them everything they touch in that time that they may not have realized: hair, light switch, their nose when it itched, etc.
I love that. That's a great idea because there's a lot of that going on during the day. Like, we don't even think about the way we touch different parts of our hair and body when we're doing things. And so having that black light expose that a little bit more, that's really cool. Thank you. And we'll move on to, so these are some of the solutions that we've thought of and started to develop or already developed for behavior change and some of these things we've talked about. So when I first started working, this was one of my first major projects, was to create some stand-up trainings for managers, because if you think about it, after someone takes an online course, then what? Managers are a very good way to reach the food handler population with ongoing training. So if they feel empowered, then hopefully they can help their food handlers remember. Animated characters, so kind of unique to our course, we have a food inspector, we have a doctor, we have different animated characters teaching this content throughout the course. Food safety in real life videos, I'm going to show you one of those. It's a new YouTube series that we're doing, taking real stories and making them animated and more accessible to people. Augmented reality, I kind of talked about one of our ideas there. We're also doing some posters for break rooms and things like that, so people aren't pulling out their phone when they're actually in the kitchen, but when they're in the break room, they can get some extra content. Scenario-based activities and corrective behavior or problem activities are throughout our course. So they might hear how a food handler washes their hand and have to correct that behavior, or identify a problem in the kitchen by finding it in the picture. So we're thinking of coming up with a cooking temperature song. We actually have the lyrics already, but we just have yet to record it. But it's actually the most commonly forgotten topic is food temperatures for like how much do I cook chicken, 165? How do I remember 165 versus 155 and 145? So that hopefully will get stuck in people's head, like in Inside Out with the gum song, It'll keep coming up. And statistics and emotional stories as well, which we kind of discussed as a group. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of the course and also check the time. Okay, we're doing pretty well. Let's see if it signed me out. Yes. So this is our standard food handler course. And I'm just going to show you a couple pages so you get an idea of what it looks like. So I don't think the audio is really working. One sec. Are there speakers that should be?
Probably just on my computer speakers, so we come change it.
That would be great. Thank you, sorry. And we don't really need speakers necessarily for this part, but for a video later, that would be great.
Of the 48 million Americans who become sick each year, about 3,000 die, most of whom are little
Let's
children.
skip forward to, so we have the do I need to stay home scenarios, where you see a food
I have
handler.
diarrhea and my throat is killing me. My boyfriend says I have a fever too.
No.
Good choice. It's
You get
unfortunate
feedback
that she has to miss work, but it's much more important to keep your customer. Let's test what you've learned so far about.
Let's practice what you've learned so far.
So yeah, you saw a scenario-based activity with that. Should I go home? And now we have a cooking temperatures activity.
This is pork tenderloin.
And you put the thermometer in, find out the temperature, and decide if it's
Great.
done or not.
What do you think? Has this pork reached a safe temperature?
What do you guys think?
No.
Actually, this pork tenderloin is done.
It's done.
It has reached 145 degrees for 15 minutes.
To keep food safe.
So there's just a sneak peek into kind of what our course looks like. We have some nice features where you can speed up the course if you want. We have captions, those are kind of new. And you can go in and interact with the captions here and skip to different parts of the video. And now I'm going to show you one of the food safety in real life videos. And this is one that I was lucky to get to work on. I got to write the script and storyboard it and then work with our artists to produce it. So it's not yet up on YouTube, so you're some of the first people to see it.
In 2017, a bakery in Massachusetts received a shocking letter from the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA. A few months before, FDA inspectors had discovered several food safety violations at the bakery. The FDA's letter outlined the violations in detail. One violation brought this story into the spotlight. The bakery had listed love as one of the ingredients in their granola, and the FDA pointed out that love was not an actual ingredient. News coverage focused on the humor of this violation, but the FDA stated that the love violation was not among the agency's top concerns. There were more important issues to deal with. To start, bakery equipment had not been sufficiently cleaned. Not only was it unsanitary, but it also had the potential to put people with food allergies in danger. Inspectors found residue from dough that contained cheese inside a mixing bowl for dairy-free bread. They also found dirty storage barrels for nuts and cheese, both major food allergens, stacked inside each other. They later saw these barrels in use without having been cleaned and sanitized. Other tools like loaf molds and cooling racks were not cleaned and sanitized between use for different allergen products. These violations could have led to a severe or even deadly allergic reaction. Other violations had dangerous implications as well. Inspectors found several flies on and around the ready-to-eat foods, and one large insect crawling near rolls in the pastry area. They also observed employees wearing jewelry while handling dough. One employee's bracelet repeatedly touched the dough. But don't worry, this frightening story of behind-the-scenes violations has a happy ending. The owners implemented several policy changes to address the violations. These improvements included new training for employees and logs for managers to track the cleaning and sanitizing in the establishment. Now, more than ever, you could say that love is an ingredient in that bakery.
So yeah, we're hoping to come out with more of these as time goes on. So now moving on to talking about the results of the survey with other recent graduates. So you might be able to guess if you knew these people, who is who, but these are some of the companies that they work for right now. So the first question I asked them was, what are the 2 or 3 most important skills that you develop in IP&T that you use now in your job? And I hope I'm not blocking anybody. But working with faculty and project management was somebody's focus. So they talked about ADDIE and design thinking. I would add to that personally for myself, Agile and the project management class was huge for me, and that was my thesis as well. And our team uses Agile processes, which has been really great. Thinking critically about how research results, not jumping into how a design will look. Layers, that's kind of a shout out to Gibbons. And designing supporting activities and assessments, programming and visual design. So this individual focused, she talked a lot about how because she learned programming and visual design principles here, she's a lot better able to communicate with programmers and designers at her company, and they really appreciate that. And curriculum design. And let's see, I would add for mine, writing. Our writing courses really helped me because I do a lot of content writing, as well as assessment writing and learning outcomes. Those courses came in huge handy for me in my role. Is there anything you would have done differently in the program now that you're in the real world? So we had someone focus on web accessibility, such as captioning for videos, alt text and images, things like that. Focus more on course projects and how they can contribute to your portfolio. That's huge, I would agree. And networking with seminar presenters and dinner with the designer. Working more with professors on publications, learning more about UX. I would definitely reinforce that too. In our company, we've just started doing usability testing, and we're already learning a lot from it. And so I wish I would have focused on that a little bit more here, but now I get to learn about it more, which is good. And then more emphasis on programming and web building, somebody else's. Okay, and this one I kind of split into 2 slides because they had more to say. So any other words of wisdom that you would offer to current students? And both of them kind of focused on getting outside yourself. One of them talked about, working hard, but then getting outside, being outside, enjoying nature, and getting away from your studies for a while. And the other focused on taking classes from a lot of professors, going to IPSO activities, and forming good relationships with your classmates. This individual in particular works with one of her classmates actively every day, so it's possible the same might happen for you. And then this person, I know by the end you're going to guess who he is. Get paid to get paid to do your thesis is one of his suggestions. Start looking at job descriptions, see what their qualifications are, and work to get those qualifications. So plan ahead. He says you don't have to change the world with your thesis, but do choose something that you're excited to talk about in job interviews. Always apply for scholarships and grants, and UX Club, that's the dead giveaway. And then this person just talked about taking advantage of real-world opportunities as much as you can, because that made him feel more prepared for interviewing and for his job. And these are my top picks. So the excited nerd on the left, I really feel strongly that as instructional designers, we need to own our role and be excited about it. Practice talking about it and keep up on current trends and theories and share them with the people around you so they understand what they do and so they get excited about it too and are invested in your learners as much as you are. So don't be afraid to be a nerd. Freedom Fridays, I mentioned a little bit earlier. So on Friday afternoons, we are encouraged to catch up on research and current trends in the field, as well as work on projects that develop skills that we're hoping to get better at, and it's been fantastic. We were even challenged by Emily to, in the last couple of months, create activities, learning activities, using new tools, and we recently showed them to each other, and it was amazing to see what people came up with. It was really cool. Our decision-based activity was one of those. And so I would encourage you, even if your workplace doesn't have a Freedom Friday, to set aside time once you graduate to keep learning once a week or however often. Keep up with what's happening in the field. Find people you want to follow, whether it's on Twitter or their blogs about instructional design or whatever your focus is, and just stay excited about what you're doing. And then finally, since we're at BYU, and it's very important, just seeking inspiration. As you're getting close to graduation, there is a lot of pressure to find a job, but the Lord really does care about our temporal needs, and He helps us. And I definitely believe in the idea of seeking a lot of good information to receive good inspiration. So doing your research, talking to a lot of people, and then being very prayerful about it will help you to find the best fit for you and your family. And I actually had one more I kind of put in last minute. So some of you guys might be familiar with this image of the duck calmly on the surface, but paddling really madly underneath. So I felt like this was often me, actually it still is me, but when I was in the program and now, where I tried out a lot of different internships and jobs and things while I was in school, and I'm so glad that I did, even though half the time I felt like I was just paddling madly underneath and hoping nobody noticed, right? But the fact that when we challenge ourselves like that, we often grow into those positions, right? And nobody quite feels prepared or qualified for anything, but by doing it, you become more qualified and you learn, and there's a lot to say about just the learning process, even when mistakes are made, and not feeding that imposter syndrome, because that's a theme with you guys in the t-shirts this year. Definitely goes with this thought, is just keep learning and keep pushing yourself, and it'll pay off. So those are my main thoughts. Yeah, we can open it up for questions. I have a little activity if we still have time after questions. But, any comments? I put riddles up here because on my whiteboard I have a riddle every day, and it's been a good way to get people to come and talk to me and get to know people in the company. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to learn a little bit more about Freedom Fridays, how the company started that, how they decided that was a good idea and kind of proved that that was a good idea.
I'll let Emily maybe address that, since she was kind of the instigator of Freedom Fridays, right?
Do I talk into the mic now?
Uh-huh.
Is this for your folks offsite? Okay. Well, Alyssa mentioned that we use an agile process. I would encourage everyone, particularly those who are interested in project management or doing project management, to read a book called Scrum, The Art of Doing Twice the Work in Half the Time. Get on your computers right now, go to Amazon and buy it. It's a very important book, an excellent book. But that book is primarily for individuals developing software, but it can be applied to different work fields. And it introduces a workflow called a sprint. A sprint is a period of time in which work is done at a sprint's pace. Our sprints in product development start on Monday morning and they end with a meeting called a retrospective, and our sprint meeting, which is on Friday mornings, which leaves a period of time that is not in a sprint, Friday afternoon. And as we started using the Scrum process and moving into a sprint cycle, I realized that moving at a sprint's pace does not necessarily encourage things like continuing education for credentialing, attention to research, housekeeping, and other critical professional development things. So we decided that Friday afternoon falls outside the sprint officially, and people are encouraged to use that time proactively. As I was heading toward maternity leave this summer, our CTO and I, our chief technologist and I, were talking about what we felt to be kind of a slackening of the team's overall creativity. Sometimes running, sprinting all the time does not leave enough space for problem solving. I've been with this company now for 10 years. Vernon started it, and when we were a smaller company, we were a scrappier company. And a lot of the things we did were by the seat of our pants. If we needed something, we just made it. If we wanted to try something, we just did it. It didn't matter, we had time. Now we're a bigger company, and we're moving faster. And so we realize that if we do not give our team members the space to create, they won't. So I challenged my team, and Vern challenged his team, that when I got back from maternity leave in 10 weeks, I wanted to see something new. And so we instituted Freedom Fridays to challenge our teams to use that time outside the sprint to create. And actually, many of the things that we saw in their kind of exposition of the Freedom Friday work over those 10 weeks are now in production as official parts of course development and technology. They just did excellent work, and so the proof was in the pudding. And that's kind of how it got started.
Thanks. All right, yes. Peter.
So Alyssa, I'd love to hear you talk about your team composition and dynamics. So you're an instructional designer on the team. What are the roles of the other people on the team? How many instructional designers are there, and what are the dynamics as you interact with your team?
Sure. So I'm part of the product development team, and I'm the only instructional designer, but we have other members of the team like senior editor, who saves my skin sometimes, and we have 2 QA team members, as well as an illustrator who you saw their awesome work on that video, and then builders. So we have 2 people who focus primarily on building the courses using products like After Effects and Adobe Animate. Yes, we have a programmer who works with Animate for our interactive activities. A character animator, that's what I was trying to say. Yes, that's another tool they use. So yeah, we got the builders, editor, QA, me, and then Emily's the head of our product development team. Any other questions?
So do we have other clients other than food handling?
We do. I didn't really talk about our other courses. So we have, under the above training umbrella, we have a bloodborne pathogens class or course for body artists, so tattoo artists and piercing artists. And then we also have a food manager course and a certified food manager exam, and then an allergens course as well. Am I forgetting anything, Emily?
We have an alcohol service and safety course. And then, and those are kind of, all of those things you mentioned are within the environmental health space, even bloodborne pathogens. We have some other products that fall outside of that, but in business, sometimes it's best to put all your eggs in one basket and then really watch that basket. And helping environmental health through learning materials is our basket.
Yeah. So our clients range from kind of the industry side that I talked about to the regulatory side. So that's my little timer for saying I'm done. So yeah, we partner with a lot of different groups of people, and we do a lot of customizations on courses too, which sometimes makes things complicated because the laws from one state to another or one county to another differ. So we have to change their courses to customize for them. All right, any other questions? Yes?
We've got one from the chat here. What do you spend most of your time, work time, doing?
Oh, that's a good question. It really depends on the day. Like I mentioned before, I do quite a bit of content writing. Lately, we've been pushing to get our course into Storyline, which isn't our LMS normally, but one of our clients has requested that, and so we're transferring everything over, so that's been where I've spent my time. Or maybe one week I'm focusing a lot on the food safety in real life, scripting and creating storyboards for that. So it really does vary for me. Basically, however I can increase the productivity of the people around me and just working on the sprint tasks. So oftentimes we're teaming up together, helping each other get things done for the week. Any other questions? Yes.
So what would you personally do differently if you were going through this program again?
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think for a moment. I think I would have taken a couple courses that I didn't, including the visual design, Adobe products kind of course, as well as a programming course. Those things I kind of picked up on my own, but I feel like I could have worked on that a little bit more. Also, I think networking a little bit more. Sometimes I got stuck in my own little box of getting my things done and didn't reach out to the people around me as much as I could have, classmates and our seminar lecturers and people like that. And so I think I might have been a little more proactive about that too. Any other questions?
Let's thank Alyssa for coming today.